Welcome and hello. Okay, we're going to do, just because this has been an avalanche of technology that we have set up today, can everyone hear me? And Asa, can you say a few words?
Yes, testing,
Okay.
testing to the universe. We have a medieval tapestry for your enjoyment. Today we have all kinds of details in this
We
technosphere. Can you hear
do.
me? I can hear you
Yes.
fine.
Wonderful. GCat is here. Hello, GCats. It's wonderful to see you. Anyone over on Twitch want to let me know if you can hear us or not?
Oh, I can't hear. So over on my stream,
Okay.
I'm seeing a message that they can't hear you.
Oh, let's see.
So
That might be because of. Hello. Can you hear me now?
do we have success?
Thank you for being patient with us, everybody. This has been, again, a whole thing.
Okay, I'm thinking we still don't have audio on Sarah. Now we have audio on Sarah. Great.
Beautiful. Okay, and I'm getting we can't hear Asa. So one moment. That this is how this works. Asa, could you say just a few things?
Yes, yes. Riffing along on the tapestry. I'm sure there's great inspiration to be drawn from great medieval tapestries.
I'm sure there is. How about that? Can folks hear? Yes. Okay, good. We can hear Asa now. Okay. Deep breath. Okay.
We're here.
We're here. Hello, everyone. This is a chill, casual, and fun stream that we are doing to talk about writing today. So, again, thank you so much for your patience as we figure out technology. So,
Yes, yes. If it's your first time here, welcome. Sarah and I have launched a bit of a sensation on YouTube. You're here for the beginnings of it. We're doing live writing workshops every Friday. We've got a sci-fi book club on Wednesdays, a horror short fiction story club on Thursdays. But since we're here to write, a little bit of context. We've done these several weekends in a row, and what we're going to do right now is the goal for the end of this stream is to have the draft of something that you can submit someplace. That's the name of the game. Is we come together on Fridays, be with each other, write something that we can then go on to revise and submit. This week we have a special theme, dark fantasy. We do a theme every week. Today is dark fantasy. So we'll kind of talk about that, talk about some tropes, ideas, brainstorms. We'll talk about a story, a particular story that's out there that you can read online. We'll put that in the comments. And then we will go to some prompts for inspiration for writing. And then we'll write 45 minutes or so. And then we'll talk about where to submit. So today we have identified a specific publication for dark fantasy that is currently open for submissions. So that's the idea, that not only will we finish something, we'll have a place to submit it if we're so inclined, and that's part of it too. It's just kind of encouraging. Sarah and I have definitely been kind of accountability buddies here. Let's finish it and let's hit send and submit it. So
yes.
that's the basic context. Did I
Wonderful.
cover everything there,
That was
Sarah?
actually incredibly thorough, and I'm very impressed. So, thank you. And do you want to just give us a quick intro to who you are, just in case folks haven't been to one of these before?
Absolutely. I'm Asa Merritt. I wrote Six Sermons. That's an Audible original. It's kind of like a TV show, a series. I'm on YouTube talking about my journey into fiction, and so that's what I'm just learning right now. I consider myself a new fiction writer, a longtime writer, but a new fiction writer, getting the confidence to write sentences for the first time is what I'm all about right now.
Love it. I love it. And I love that you are doing this like very publicly. I think that's very commendable and just really generous of you to I don't know, I feel like the only way we learn is really to just go through things, and I think being willing to be public with going through things is just it's fantastic. So I appreciate you doing that. Um
Yeah, well, same, Sarah. Why don't you introduce yourself? Give us a little context.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Sarah Werner. I am a writer and podcast producer and all sorts of things. I created Girl in Space, the audio drama, and then I have a show for writers called Right Now. I'm conveniently I did not intend this, but I have my mug for the show. So give Right Now a listen if you haven't already. I'm just excited to be here. Asa has been really my guide in this whole thing. I had not written short fiction since college. And when Asa contacted me to do one of these workshops, I was like, okay. And the first thing I wrote was this weird Wild West story. And it was so fulfilling and so fun. And it really reminded me of why I love to write. And so I am so here for these Friday write alongs. I have not, this is what I've been doing. I've not done any preparation. I just have a blank notebook and I'm literally going to open up the notebook and start writing when we go. So I'm very excited for that. But first,
But first, dark fantasy. So we have a nice little presentation here.
we do.
So I'm going to try to pull it up. We've got separate streams in business here. This is dark fantasy. So dark fantasy is a subgenre of fantasy. Sarah, what are some of the basics of this subgenre?
So let's see. I want to make sure that I am looking at the right thing. Let's see. We're going to just vamp for a second because, let's see. Good. So this is what happens. You just do it live and then you end up needing a link to the slide presentation because my computer restarted. Dark fantasy, you know what? I'm just gonna riff here. I don't need that up. Dark fantasy is sort of your traditional medieval tale. It's what you think of when you think of King Arthur and the Round Table. It's the fantasy that inspired The Lord of the Rings. It's the fantasy that has inspired so many generations of storytellers. Dark fantasy is a little bit more on the dark side. Often, dark fantasy will end in tragedy. It will have violence. It will have fighting. It will have blood. It can be a little bit less romantic. You know, we think of those Arthurian legends, especially with people like Lancelot, as being very, very romantic, both in the sense of grand dreams and in the sense of like romantic relationships. Dark fantasy pulls back from that a little bit and focuses a little bit more on fear and terror. Often will even have cosmic horror elements. So think Cthulhu without the Cthulhu. So it'll have Lovecraftian elements without Lovecraft. And so it was actually really interesting. I'm really eager to jump into our story today because I think it's like dark fantasy light, which I think is a really beautiful bridge between what a lot of people will understand as like just the fantasy they know and love, and then the dark fantasy that we're going to be talking about today. So,
Yes, for sure. So we found this great story. So this story, and I'll pop it in
oh,
here, and
thank
I
you.
think Sarah will do the
I
same.
will.
This is called The Questing Beast by Cares Crossan. And let me get it there for y'all in the chat once I figure this out. So, this story, it's not a short story. It's a long short story, or at least a medium length one, right? So it'll be challenging to like completely just read all this as we're talking. But what we're going to do is we're going to summarize it for you and kind of read passages so that you get a sense of this genre. So, context, this story, The Questing Beast, was published at Old Moon Publishing. Old Moon Publishing is the dark fantasy outlet currently seeking submissions that we're going to kind of try our hand at today. And so we are just sort of, again, thinking about process professionally. It's like we're looking at the examples of the place we're pitching to, submitting to for like our home for analysis. And so that's why we chose this story. It's because this story was published where we are sending our stories to. So this story is all about a mythological monster, demigod, I should say, demigod, who is the child of a demon and a mortal woman. And in the course of this story, this demigod has to flee from a hunter. He enlists his demon father to kill the hunter, but it turns out that his father, who is a demon, is not honest and tricks him in reverse. And so there's so much here that we can talk about for inspiration. Yes, yes. Hopefully, folks have the story.
Oh,
Um,
and real quick, if you don't have the story up, Asa, maybe you mentioned this when I was vamping and having technical difficulties, but if you're a member of our Discord, we have a link to the story currently showing in our Discord. If you would like to join our Discord, if you'd like to go to our Discord, there is a link to it in the description for this video, at least on my end. And maybe on
yes,
your end.
same.
Okay, perfect. Good. So please do join us over in the Discord. That's where a lot of the context will be happening for these discussions. And we're just really excited to have you there. So yes, okay. The would you like to read just maybe the first sentence or two of this story?
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Here we go.
All right.
My antecedents are unfortunate. It is true. Diabolical, shameful, malignant. But the blame cannot be heaped upon my feline shoulders. My mother was walking out in the woods one day and encountered a handsome gentleman with a tongue that could have parted the thighs of Lucrece. So, okay, it's a little bit of a challenging read aloud story
It is.
because a lot going around, a lot going along, excuse me, a lot happening in these parentheticals. So, my antecedents are unfortunate. It is true. And then in parentheses, diabolical, shameful, malignant. So yeah, so tell us, Sarah, what's going on with that?
Yeah.
What are those ellipticals about? Like, kind of break down this story for folks.
Absolutely. I did not expect to like this story as much as I did. I kind of want to read a whole novel about this character, but basically, what the author's doing is using the structure. They're playing with the structure, kind of more like you would in poetry, to convey that there are multiple voices speaking. So, this main character, this, I think you said demigod, defines themselves sort of as what I thought of as like a chimera. They have a snake for a head. They have leopard paws. They have deer hooves. There's four animals that make up our narrator, and each one has a different voice. And so the main voice is the snakehead's voice. And then the diabolical is in italics. I'm going to try to remember. I think that was the leopard. The shameful in the regular text is the lion, or no, oh no, what let's see.
Well,
Huh?
there's so many there. Well, there's the snake, there's the snake is the
There's a
head,
snake the
there's the
head,
line.
lion. What was the third one though? I'm not gonna.
I didn't even they all kind of I all
They
kind of like
blur together. Okay.
let it blur together. It's so funny. I didn't even realize that there was like like a formatting that corresponded to each one,
Yeah,
which
and
makes
then
total sense.
it does. Well, and then the last one, the underlined one. So like I don't know what you would do if there's one more character because you're kind of out of formatting options at that point. But then the last one is the deer, and the deer only speaks very rarely, but when it does, it is wise. And I and you can taste each of the different voices. It's so incredibly done. It's so skillfully done. And what really got me was that on top of it all, on top of this extremely difficult formatting for this story, it actually also tells a really good story. It draws upon the legend of, let's see, Pellinor, who my Arthurian knowledge is not incredible. And so please forgive me. I don't know a lot about Pellinor. I know a lot about Lancelot and Guinevere and Merlin and all them, but Pellinor I did not know a lot about. But really what got me about this story is the main character is this demigod. We're talking about dark fantasy. So my expectation going in was that this was not going to be a happy story. But this is actually like one of the most cheerful, loving fantasy stories I've read in a really long time. And that's including some of the modern fantasy that I have like on my shelf here. Um, the Seraphinas and the YA fantasy. This was just about on the level and maybe even a little bit more kind-hearted and generous in just a way I did not expect. Um,
Okay, well, that's
yeah.
like a really great observation inside them, because then it's kind of like, okay, well, if it wasn't a dark story in the sense that nothing terrible happened, there wasn't feelings of doom
Mm,
or dread, that the sort of emotional experience was one of warmth and positivity, and that is what happens. It's kind of ultimately like a happy ending story. So then what is it that makes it dark fantasy is our next question. I would go so far to say that it's dark fantasy in that the story kind of knows it's a fantasy story.
Mm.
I think to some extent it knows it's in the Arthurian universe. It's referencing uh, the world of Camelot, referencing Lancelot, these characters in this kind of almost meta capacity, which almost gives it like genre cynicism, as
Ooh.
it were, you know? Like, so I think maybe that's what kind of puts it into this like dark fantasy category where it's like, even though the story is a sort of positive emotional experience, it's sort of like cuts because it's playing dangerously. It's playing with our innocence. Like the innocence
Mm.
of a fantasy story is a little bit absent because it's kind of it knows that it exists in the beautiful forest and it's gonna like let you know that it knows.
That's a really good analysis of that, Asa. I really appreciate that. My answer was gonna be, "Oh, it's because it's told from scary monster point of view." And so, yours is a lot more eloquent than mine.
Well, something you said triggered that. That was not a thought that I had
Okay.
before now. But that is though, I think actually though, I would love to talk about that because I do think that is one of the more meaningful sort of takeaways from this story is so just to kind of clarify the speaker of the story is a demigod, a monster. It's a creature that is parts of many different animals. And so not only is it just it's not just that you're imagining kind of like a sphinx or a centaur or something. Each part of the character has a different consciousness, and so
Mm.
that what's happening like formally in the story is that we hear from the various animal constituent parts that comprise this monster. And I think that is though. I think that is part of it. Also, is that's dark. It's really like rich and inventive and playful. But I think that yes, the fact that we are sort of giving agency and
Mm.
consciousness to like four different, it's like a Frankenstein-esque type situation. I do think that is also what makes it dark.
One other thing, as you were saying that, you reminded me of something too, and it has to do with that point of view. And setting up this character. This is essentially the spawn of a demon. They make mention in the very beginning of the story that uh, this creature was born of a human mother, and at that point, when it was born, when they were born, the whole like they ran away before the whole village could murder them, and so it sets you up to understand that like the main character is a tragic figure, but we're not reading a tragedy, and that was so interesting to me. And really all this main character wants is peace and solace. Like that's really all they want. They just want to be left alone, right? They don't want riches, they don't have big dreams, and maybe that is also in itself a little bit of a tragedy. But it reminded me the feeling, and calling this a happy ending reminded me a little bit of, have you read Shirley Jackson's We Have Always Lived in the Castle?
Yes.
Okay, do you remember the ending of that?
Remind me. I
Oh,
don't. I remember the feeling of reading
yes,
that book.
okay.
I don't remember how it ends though. How does it end?
It ends with the 2 sisters, and they're just, like, walking through, I think they're just walking through the ruins of the house, and I remember I gave the book to my husband, Tim, and I was like, "Tim, this book is so beautiful and moving," and then he read it, and at the end, he was like, "Why did you give me this book? It was so sad and upsetting," and I was like, "No, it was hopeful and beautiful." And so I think that, like, there's some beauty in the tragedy in the like, it and it's, kinda having a conversation with itself in that regard as well.
Definitely. Yes, I love that. Shirley Jackson, American thriller horror writer, the goddess, godmother of us all. Check out that book. That is a great read. It was the last one she wrote before she
Was it?
died, I think.
Oh, I didn't.
I believe so. I think that that's a cool thought. Also, that brings me to the ending of this story. Like you saying that it's in conversation with itself. To me, that was a really exciting part of the story at the very end. So, at the very
Mm,
end of the story, folks, if what happens is that it zooms out and all of a sudden we learn that the speaker, this creature monster character, is talking from the present,
Mhm.
and the knights are gone, and the Renaissance and the castles and Camelot is all gone, and they only exist in the stories, and maybe they will have to come again, but probably not. What was that
Mm.
experience for you? Where when you got to that part of the story, how did that make you
Yeah,
feel?
that was unexpected. That was and maybe that's part of why the story was so engaging for me because it constantly surprised me and it constantly turned the tables on how I experienced the story. Because now, zooming out, I think generations upon generations, zooming out on that, it was I don't know, it changed the context entirely because now, oh wait, I'm reading this now with as a modern reader who is versed in these stories. This is maybe why this character is so versed in these stories, why they're so meta about it because they've been reading, about essentially creatures like themselves. How very strange. Um, but they talk about I don't know. It's we could get really like into the meta-ness of it about, what does it even mean for this creature to exist right now? Do they only exist because we're reading them and giving them a voice in our minds? Is that how they exist? And when we stop reading, they stop existing. That could be another aspect of sort of the
Mm.
tragic in this dark fantasy. Um, but yeah, they also talk about in the very end I'm just gonna read this last bit here. So after they talk about like, yeah, Pellinor lived out his days happily, and the little girl we kidnapped as bait lived happily ever after and had many grandchildren. And then it ends, but we will never have a friend, opponent, ally as good as Pellinor. History has not been kind to him, but we know better. Perhaps someday, when King Arthur returns, we might be allowed to return too and set the record straight. So it's really there is a sense of longing here in the past being irretrievable, the past being gone and done with, and the future only being a vague hope that, well, maybe if Arthur returns, we can return too. Um, so I don't know. Am I reading like way too much into all of this?
Oh, I don't know. I mean this is like a great, huge, broad question about fantasy in general that I just would love to hear if anyone watching is an avid fantasy reader. I'd love your take on this. It's a genre that I haven't read a ton of um, as an adult. Is this the core experience of reading fantasy? Is it giving a sense of nostalgia? Is that what we're seeking? Right? Is this like a pleasurable psychic space that harkens to another time? And maybe this is a similar kind of gesture where the story knows it's a fantasy,
Mm,
and that knowledge itself makes it dark. The fact that this story knows that it, the fact that we're in the future, this is not a story being told in whatever year 1100. It's like it's a telling of a story that happened then, but because it's being told now, some of that feeling of nostalgia is kind of you know neutered a little bit.
mm,
It's like cut. And so I guess for me that's what I think about here is like, is as a genre at large, is that what fantasy is trying to do? Is this, but clearly that's a little too narrow of a definition, because this story for sure is trying to subvert that. So that's I'd love, I don't know if anyone out there is an avid reader, or like this is a conversation to have with our avid fantasy reader friends. But for you, how does the nostalgia piece fit in?
that's such an interesting question. So, like, kind of to go back, just so to make sure I'm 100% understanding, are you talking about equating fantasy with sort of the past, with times gone by, with that being sort of the fantastical?
Well, yeah, I guess just like the kind of, well, specifically this story where, as you said at the end, the character has this like, the character's lived its best days in some ways, or the days of its life that it accrued stories worth telling
Yeah.
are over, you know? And at some level, I wonder, it's like, I mean, this is just sort of maybe too slightly beyond the scope of what is directly useful. But yeah, I guess it's just like, it just makes me think about that as a genre at large and this larger conversation, which I'm sure we'll continue to enter in these coming weeks as we enter the horror anthology and the science fiction anthology. If you're just hopping on, Sarah and I are starting two book clubs, story clubs, where we're working our way through these giant 1,000-page collections of short stories about sci-fi and fantasy, respectively. And in an effort to learn how to write these kind of stories and understand these forms. And what I'm saying is, like, I think we'll be returning to this conversation at
Mm,
some level again and again and again as we work our way through these stories. Is what is Why do we go to science fiction? Why do we
mm.
go to horror? Why do we go to fantasy? Why do we go to speculative fiction? Why do we go to worlds outside of our own? And yes, like, what this story does is it kind of transports us back to a world that's not ours, but at the very end is like, just kidding, I'm still in your world. I'm on the shelf next to Harry Potter and all the other fake wizards, you know
But are they fake?
so
Like I mean,
yeah.
it's meta in so many different ways, and I really appreciate that. I have to say too, like my standard understanding of fantasy comes with this Arthurian backdrop. And I know the other day we were talking and I mentioned like, oh, would the Green Knight, the A24 movie, would that count as dark fantasy? I think it would. I think it definitely would. It's got a lot of horror elements in it. But I kind of forget that things like Moana, the Disney movie, are also fantasy, and like that this fantasy tradition is a lot bigger than just like the medieval sword and sorcery that we kind of, or at least that I kind of default to. So I appreciate you bringing up like, oh, it's next to Harry Potter on the shelf because yeah, that is the more modern fantasy and way outside of the medieval element.
Well, I like that you used the word sword and sorcery there. I think we can use that as a
Oh,
transition a
oh, I'm
transition
excited.
into the actual writing. This publication, uh, Old Moon Publishers is the name of the place with the open call right now for dark fantasy. Old Moon Publishing, and they identify as a place seeking sword and sorcery stories. I'm going to read the what we want section here. Old Moon publishes character focused, weird sword and sorcery, stories dark and tragic, set in a secondary or historical paranormal reality world, with a focus on rounded characters undergoing some sort of conflict, resolved, though not always successfully, by the might of their main or mind. We love stories that combine that sense of action and adventure with well rounded characters who make us question our own realities and perceptions. We love to see the Gothic, the Baroque, the Eldritch, and we love to see it hit with an axe. So, our mandate is specific here. This is exciting, right? It's like, yes, there are a zillion different kinds of fantasy, but today, in the next 45 hours, we are writing sword and sorcery. We are writing, this specific kind of high-esque fantasy. Any thoughts there on that? I'll try to get that up on screen,
Oh, that would be great. Yeah.
for everyone. While I'm doing that, Sarah, like, what's your kind of take on that? Or
I
advice, more specifically
oh,
advice. It's like, okay, that's the mandate. So now what?
right. I really think that the story that we read today was really in line with what they're asking for. It's definitely character focused. That is the whole context for the story that we see. It's weird in that it's there in okay, I should probably back up. When we talk about weird in fiction, when we talk about weird in literature, we're not just talking about like, oh, that's weird. We're talking about like the bizarre. We're talking about in art like the Dadaist movement. We're talking about, how weird can we make this? How supernatural can we make this? How much horror can we pack into it? How many Lovecraftian elements can we slip in here? And we talked about this a little bit in our first workshop where we talked about Weird Wild West and how it had those supernatural elements, maybe some steampunk elements, maybe some mysticism, etc. And so they're looking for that weirdness mixed with sword and sorcery, mixed with the dark and tragic slash horrifying, set in a secondary or historical paranormal world. And there is a lot going on here. And I think rather than terrify you and like give you a checklist of like, okay, I need swords, I need sorcery, I need tragedy, I need a Lovecraftian monster that's not Lovecraftian but kind of reminds you of one. Don't worry about that. I'd like you to focus today. We have a prompt for you. And what I would like you to focus on, just so that you're not everywhere, is character focused. So you're going to focus on developing this character and giving them a narrative arc. And you're going to do so in a sort of dark fantasy setting. So I really wanted to like strip that away and simplify it because it feels like they're asking for a lot. But I think that once you get started writing the story, you'll kind of settle into it and hopefully find your voice there.
I'm so glad you said that. And so, it's like the road diverged in the wood there, and there was like the jungle of like defining fantasy and the like what needs to be said right now so that we can all just write for
Yes.
45 minutes and not go crazy. And I'm glad that you chose that path.
Thank you.
And we have a prompt. Here's the prompt. If you're just listening, a deathless knight on a skeletal steed appears each night to enforce a centuries old treaty until one day a young squire with a dark secret steps into its path. I'm going to read that one more time. A deathless knight on a skeletal steed appears each night to enforce a centuries old treaty until one day a young squire with a dark secret steps into its path. So, if you need inspiration, there is a sort of prompt for you. We have an image of Old Moon, the publication, this janky looking knight, dark fantasy. Um, what's the plan now, Sarah?
Right. The plan now is well, and actually, we've got a few comments here. Hello, Drayton. Jimmy says Sword and Sorcery exemplars. Robert E. Howard, Clark Ashton Smith, Tanith Lee. I love Tanith Lee. Jarell of Jory by C.L. Moore. I don't know that one, but that's fantastic. So I think Jimmy is the expert we're looking for here. Um, Drayton says, yes, fantasy has a really wide range. So just some folks chiming in and agreeing with, how deceptively broad fantasy can be. I
Sure.
completely forgot the question that you asked me. I'm so sorry.
No, I think that's. I think that was great. Thank you for everyone for weighing in with your experiences. No, the question was just specifically here. So we're just gonna write. I think is the plan, um, for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
And what are we trying to do here in 45 minutes? Are we going for a word count? Are we going for an outline? What are we trying to do? What are you trying to do? I should say.
That's a really good question. So I am a pantser, so a writer who writes by the seat of their pants. I am not good with outlines. If you give me an outline, I will either have a panic attack or ignore it completely. And so I actually recently, my friend Kat texted me this morning and said, "Hey, did you know that people are calling pantsing discovery writing now?" And I was like, "Oh, it sounds so much more professional when you put it that way." So I'm going to be doing a little bit of discovery writing, which means I'm going to sit down. I have my notebook that I've used for our last few sessions here. I'm going to open it up to a blank page. And I'm going to put my pen to the page and write about the deathless knight and the squire who stands in their way. How about you, Asa? What's your process?
Well, okay, for short fiction, I'm the same. I'm the
Mm.
same. For me, it's all about like I'm only as good as how deep I can get to my unconscious, and
Yeah.
particularly in short fiction, right? Particularly, it's like I'm gonna try to similarly just grab onto something that is activating my imagination. I'm very excited by the idea of a centuries old treaty. I'm excited by that. And, because there's so many different agreements, some of which are not, just like simple trade agreements and everything that we build our civilizations on that just last. And that is like a really inspiring, tasty little detail for me.
Ooh.
So I think I'm just going to kind of see what that brings. But yeah, so good luck, everyone. At the end, we'll loop back. I'll keep this prompt up and we'll loop back and share some first senses and share how it went.
Wonderful. And I will make sure I know the prompt isn't up there now, but it will be in just a moment. So thank you for your patience. And Asa, do you want to be our clock timer?
Okay, so on brand for me. I promised that I will have a clock, and I
Eh,
and I don't. So it's almost a running joke, but it's a quarter till wherever you are. It's a
yes.
quarter till. So let's meet back at half an hour on the next hour. So if you're in Eastern, that's 1:30 EST, depending on where you are, 45 minutes from now.
Wonderful. Okay. And I'm going to make sure that we have. Oh, all right. We should have. I'll work on the prompt thing. We'll get that functioning
Okay.
eventually. For now, let's dig in and write some dark fantasy. I'm very excited.
Okay. See you in 45.
All right. Good luck, everyone. There we go. Can folks hear us? Oh. Hello, Anne is here. Hello, Anne. It's great to see you. Congrats on the award. My gosh. Let's see. Asa, can you hear me now? Oh, wait. There we go.
There you are.
700,000 years later.
Whew.
Oh, I was like, why isn't he responding? It was just it was completely on my end. So, yes. How are you doing? How was that? How was your
Okay.
time?
It was a sign that you can always pull out of the gutter. I was in a state of panic. I was worked up over our early technical difficulties. I was distracted. I was like, oh my God, I just have to for 45 minutes. How am I going to get through this? I'm never going to be, there's no way I'm going to be able to write anything right now. Everything's ruined. Da, 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 da. But of course, art provides the imagination starts to trickle.
It
I don't have
does.
a lot, but I have a start.
Good.
So the sort of ultimate lesson of that last moment for me is just like, just take a deep breath, get your attention back, put it in
Mm.
front of you, and then do something with it. And after much internal fretting, I was able to do that just now. How was it? How was it for you?
Yeah, okay, it's interesting you say that. I also had a little bit of a challenge. I had not realized I feel like I'm familiar-ish with fantasy. I read mostly sci-fi and horror, but I know, I've been around fantasy, and it was striking to me how easy it is for me to start a horror story, for me to start a sci-fi story. Whereas with fantasy, for 45 minutes, literally, this you can see these two small pages. This is all I wrote in 45 minutes because I started about 9 times. I didn't
Okay.
know how to start a fantasy story. And
Mm,
I'm sure it was a mental block. I'm sure it's because it's just a genre that I'm less familiar writing. Um, but when I start a horror story, I start in media res, I start at a shocking point. I start, at a place that feels visceral. When I'm writing sci-fi, I start from a place of curiosity. I start from a place of what can I give people to wonder about? And I didn't know what that hook was for writing fantasy. It just evaded me, and I still don't know if I got it.
whew. Wow. Yeah. No, I hear all that. I mean, that's the classic, like, what is genre? And it's so interesting, the whole conversation around genre, right? Genres were invented as marketing tools to help kind of get readers to find, work to find its readers.
Mm,
What is genre anyway? Like, would iconic, did Poe consider himself a horror writer? What, these are, so it's all so anything goes, but also the conventions are real. And, you know, even if these expectations are ones we put on ourselves, they're very real. So that's intense. I mean, I do think that most would just say, like, look, there's, who's to say what's horror, where dark fantasy ends and green horror begins, or whatever,
right,
right?
right.
Like, who's to say? And but it's just a cool, like, yeah, I just think that's a real sign of what it is to be in process and on this way towards mastery and total confidence as a creator, writer, and artist, to sort of just, be able to embark where you don't know where you're
Mm,
going in a way that, like, is free of fear. I think we're constantly having to re-trick ourselves or relearn that confidence and that
mm.
courage, the blank page, just going for it, even though it's not right. I mean, I'm in the same boat. I mean, I really spun my wheels here in the beginning as well. Um,
Do you want to share your opening
yeah,
to your story?
sure. Yeah, I do. I do. I do. After all that, it's like, okay, all right. Here we go. The treaty between Arthur and the Bogmen is little discussed, and most think the story of an actual signing is apocryphal. After all, those who encounter the Bogmen find themselves insane beyond intelligible communication. I was there that day, however. I heard the king's emissary speak, and I saw the Bogman sign. The treaty is binding, and its violation is nigh.
That's amazing. Wait, why are you laughing? That's amazing. Tell me more.
Well, I was just like nigh, like to put this idea of like genre nigh. It's like what is nigh? Who says nigh? In
Well,
what
you do in
genres are we allowed to say
fantasy.
nigh?
I mean, fantasy
Okay, right?
seems
Okay,
appropriate.
I think that's why I was laughing because nigh is not a word I write or say or read that often as a sort of this is the beginner, and I love it, and I share your like feelings of like, what am I doing? That was mine. Do you want to share? Do you want to share what you came up with?
I do. And, talking about facing that blank page, just because I didn't know what else to put, I wrote the prompt. Like, I know it was on the screen, but I had to write the prompt just to get the ink flowing. And by ink, I mean brain juice. Like, it was.
Yeah.
So, anyway, that's actually like probably a good 10% of my words here is just rewriting the prompt. But, all right. So, I'm going to read you the first sentence that I scrapped and then the sentence that I ended up with. So,
Okay.
the first sentence. She had heard about the legend, and then I crossed it out because I was like, well, this is fantasy. And Asa, when you read your piece with that omniscient third person narrator, like looking down with wisdom, with knowledge of the past, like that feels so much more fantasy to me. It feels more like the person who's telling the story has experience. It's not present tense, right? It's past tense. It's telling a story. And I was like, this didn't feel right. So what I moved to was, this was now the beginning of the story. Upon the crest of a black chasm, a dark gold-veined fortress stamped a silhouette across the sky. And while the orange glow would soon fade to black, sinking and drowning the fortress in night, nothing would remain hidden beneath the unblinking eyes of Renderil.
Great.
But like, do you see the tone shift
Definitely.
there? Like,
definitely.
I started this
Yes.
in my normal storytelling voice, and then I was like, this does not feel appropriate.
Wow, that's really interesting. Yes, and it's like you almost went the pendulum the other way. It's like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna write a sentence in which that no one for 1 millisecond thinks this is anything besides a fantasy story.
You're gonna know where you are. I put
You're
landmarks
gonna know
in
where
there.
you are. Well, I like that. I like that sense. Gothic, evocative, a giant image, a bold stroke of the brush to lead us in. Wow, what a thing to struggle.
Yeah.
This is great. Let's see. Did any of your folks, anyone out there? We've got a couple different chats going.
We do. One day.
Any first sentences over there, Sarah?
Yeah. Anybody want to share your first sentences here in chat? Let's see. GCat, hey. Anyone have a sentence they want to share? And I want to say, as I always say during ride-alongs, you do not have to share. I know that for a lot of people, this is a really, like we were just talking about, this is a scary process. This is deeply personal and scary. And so if you want to just like lurk in the background, we see you. Well, we don't see you because you're lurking in the background, but we get it. We get it, and we're here for it. So I don't see any folks sharing their first sentences here, but yeah.
Well, if you're there just thinking to yourself that you're just still writing furiously, and you, unlike Sarah and I, are a seasoned sword and sorcery writer,
Jimmy,
and you want to submit this story,
Brayton,
Jimmy, among others, here is uploading it on mine now. Sarah, I don't know if you're able to do the same for yours. I'm putting up the submission details. So if you're listening, we're well into the feed here, and oldmoonpublishing.com/submissions.
I am putting it. I'm putting that here in the chat for my folks.
Oh, smart.
And then I will also go back and put a link to the submissions page in the what is it, the description for the video. So let's see.
Great call.
Submission guidelines, just for folks who are interested in writing and submitting. Um, Asa does so much research into publications. Wait, oh, we have from Gated Galaxies, we have a first sentence.
Oh, let's hear it.
I'm gonna share it with you.
Okay.
Okay. With a sigh, Eldrake pulled the straw from the still steaming body of Human 7 and flicked it into a nearby bin. Human 7 stood a second more before slumping to the pavement.
Just
That's
classic
so
Human
good.
7. Classic Human 7. Wow, moving after they're dead. Love it.
I love
Love it.
this. Oh my gosh,
Okay, I
thank you
got one
for
over
sharing.
here.
Okay, okay.
I got one over here from Narrative Vault. Little did people know she lived with a dark secret. Dressed in khaki slacks, a pinstriped blouse, and a luxurious navy blazer, she exuded timeless elegance and intimidation. So I really hope that this is about to become a full-blown high fantasy hybrid of some kind of, I'm seeing like, American Psycho kind of like corporate thriller vibes is what I'm getting here in this first sentence. But if this somehow transports itself to the castle on the hill in your story, uh, then I really love that thesis for dark fantasy. I think we just made it up on the spot and it's kind of fun, but one which it's like it knows dark fantasy knows it's fantasy and is like messing with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like both those sentences, right, with Human 7, which for me really gives like a sci-fi future type situation, and this one, which is situated in the contemporary world at some level, take us down a path suggesting a non-fantasy universe. But then if somehow we are brought convincingly, compellingly, elegantly into one, then I think we have tremendous stories on our hands where the bounds of the genre are being sort of pushed and jostled, and folks like us are asking, what is dark fantasy? And I think that those two first sentences, if they can find their ways to live in the fantasy universe, could do just that.
Or if they're recreating the dark fantasy universe. I mean, I love the idea of a knight in a khaki power suit, like in a navy
Yes.
blazer. Like that's beautiful. I love that so much, and I would love to read and hear more of that. Yeah, it's interesting playing with genre and expectation and what do you need to adhere to and what can you step away from? What can you reinvent? What do you need to stay traditional to? Like it's just there's so many questions, and I think that writing yourself through the story is just a fun way to explore that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't think either of us necessarily have the answers. I'm so
Mm-mm.
curious about or to this particular question, like the elements of a fantasy that are exchangeable in thinking back of our conversation around weird Westerns and how you can have a space Western.
Mm.
And it's like, there don't have to be horses for something to be a Western. And I'm just thinking about those two sentences and it's like, and you talk about the tropes and thematics of westerns, individualism and kind of frontier psychology. Does fantasy have those too? It's
Mm.
like, is there a fantasy that takes place in 1962? Like I don't think so, but I would love someone to tell me that there is and explain why. Like just like what is the sort of moral universe that we're exploring and all that, in the same way that a western has one that you can then transpose to different times and places.
Well, I'm even thinking of the His Dark Materials trilogy by Philip Pullman and how that's sort of out of time. Like it could be, like 1930s England, it could be another universe altogether, but like that is I would say that's probably also, dark fantasy. It's written for a younger audience, but
Well,
yeah.
right. I mean, that's that whole like dark, dark academia
Yeah.
as this, so
Yes.
yeah, right. Where does dark academia, dark fantasy, what are the intersections there?
And what is a
Great work,
subset of what?
everyone.
Yes.
Um, Yes. So best of writing here with the next phases.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
so much to share right now. Go ahead. What
yeah.
you got another sentence?
GCat says, I didn't write a story, but I had a great time making notes. And that's really what we're here for. So I'm really glad that you had a great time making notes. And I hope that you do something with them. So I
Yes.
I will let you continue, Asa.
Oh, this is just the part of the video where we just like lay out the cards. This is who we are. This is what we're trying to do. Thank you for being here.
Mm,
We just launched this Discord, tentatively called Spec Fic Circle, and in my little brain, I'm having like a circle that goes from read to write to repeat, read, write, repeat. And I think that is something like what we're trying to do here together, Sarah and I, and have been
mm,
doing the last few weeks. Just reading great stories, writing great stories, repeating, getting better at it along the way. And that's the plan here. So starting next week, we're going to be live 3 times a week. If you could believe it or not, 3 times a week. And on Wednesdays, we're going to be doing a short story book club. The Big Book of Science Fiction is the name of the anthology we're reading. On Thursday, we're doing a horror short story book club, The Dark Descent, reading through that anthology. And then on Fridays, every Friday, there are going to be more events like this where we actually write. And yeah, the idea here is to like actually finish stuff and send it. And we've got a Discord. Um, Stay tuned. I actually have the Discord info in another video. We'll get you the Discord info, and yeah, so that's the jam, y'all. And I just think that if we get all of you coming back, and I mean, Sarah and I are already learning so much from each other, and it's just great to have you. And that's what's coming. That's what's coming up. Specifically, the very first story for the science fiction book club is called The Star by H.G. Wells. If you need to go find those books and they don't come in time before Wednesday, The Star by H.G. Wells is Wednesday's story, and The Breach by Stephen King is the horror short story for Thursday.
starting with two
Yeah,
greats, like
two
wow,
grades.
wow. Can it go up from there?
I mean, I think these collections prove that,
All right.
Yeah.
I'm anxious to see.
Um, but that's the download. Sarah, is that what am I leaving out in terms of the download, the vision?
I think that that's great. I mean, we're just here to hang out and learn more about writing alongside you. Asa and I are kind of figuring this out as we go, and we're just really delighted you're along for the ride with us. I did pop the Discord link into the chat on both Twitch and YouTube, and I'll make sure it should be in the video description. If you want to navigate there and join us, we'll just be putting context there for these videos. So we'll have the submission guidelines linked there. We'll have the prompt there. We'll have all of these things. Links to stories. I want to say the H.G. Wells story at least is public domain, question mark. I don't know. I should look into that before saying that boldly on a video. But yeah, we'll have more information on the stories we're reading in the Discord. Otherwise, should we let people get back to their day?
Yeah, yeah, get back to your days. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Yeah, happy writing. Again, join the Discord. Asa, thank you for doing this. You can find both of us, follow us on YouTube, and so you'll be notified when we go live. And yeah, we'll see you again next week.
Yeah, we'll see you Wednesday.
Bye for now, friends.
Bye.